It was the kind of winter night where the air itself seemed to carry weight. I was 32, working long hauls for a trucking company, and this particular trip had me crossing 2 states with a trailer full of industrial parts. The holiday season was in full swing, but the roads were quieter than usual. Most folks were already home, tucked in with family. I wasn't. My family that week was the hum of the diesel engine, the endless stretch of asphalt, and the swirling snow illuminated by my headlights. I'd left town at exactly 6 p.m., timing my route to avoid the worst of the traffic. The snow wasn't too bad yet, just enough to dust the ground and soften the world under a thin white veil. But driving in winter is always deceptive. You never know when that pretty snowfall will turn to ice, or when the fog will settle in thick enough to blind you. 5 hours later, my body told me it was time for a break. My neck was stiff, my eyes gritty from focusing on the hypnotic rhythm of passing lane markers. I spotted the glow of a truck stop sign in the distance, a faded red and blue neon beacon promising coffee, bathrooms, and maybe a hot sandwich if I wanted one. I pulled in, the tires crunching over patches of frozen slush. The lot wasn't empty, but it was far from busy. 2 other rigs were parked under the brighter lights near the entrance, their engines idling quietly, exhaust curling like ghosts into the cold night air. I chose a spot off to the side, away from the main entrance. Habit. I like my solitude, even on the road. The building itself looked like it hadn't been updated since the late 80s. Yellowed siding, the flicker of a buzzing light over the door, and a large picture window smeared with condensation from the warmth inside. My boots squeaked over the icy pavement as I made my way in, the sharp scent of diesel mixing with the faint aroma of cheap diner food. Inside it was warmer, but not exactly inviting. The tile floors were scuffed, and the overhead lights hummed faintly, casting a slightly sickly yellow glow. Behind the counter, a tired-looking woman in a faded polo shirt barely glanced up from her magazine. I gave her a nod, headed to the restroom, and then poured myself a coffee from the big metal urn by the counter. The coffee was strong, bitter, the kind that's more medicine than beverage. I stepped back outside, grateful for the crisp bite of the air after the stale warmth inside. That's when I noticed him. At first, I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks in the low light. The rear corner of the building wasn't well lit, just a single dim security lamp casting long, weak shadows across the snow. But there he was, a man, standing, still, leaning against a wall like he'd been there for hours. He wasn't smoking, he wasn't on the phone, he wasn't doing anything at all, just standing. His face was partly hidden in shadow, but I could feel his gaze, locked on me. I climbed into the cab, set my coffee in the cup holder, and tried to shake it off. Truck stops attract all kinds of characters. Maybe he was just another driver stretching his legs. Still, something about the way he stood there, it wasn't casual. His stillness was deliberate, like an animal stalking prey. I told myself not to be paranoid, but when I took another sip of coffee and glanced back through the windshield, my stomach knotted. He was still there, still staring. There was no reason for him to be looking in my direction. My truck was the only one parked in this far corner of the lot, and I hadn't spoken a word to him, or anyone else for that matter. But he didn't break eye contact, didn't shift his weight, didn't even pretend to be doing anything else. I could feel the tension crawling up my spine. My instincts, those ones you get from years of being on the road and meeting all kinds of types, were screaming at me. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. The snow was starting to fall a little heavier now, tiny flakes spinning in the wind and catching the pale light from the lampposts. The rest of the lot seemed to fade away. It was just me, my truck, and him. I thought about killing the engine and trying to get some rest there, but the idea made my skin crawl. Sleeping with that man somewhere nearby, watching, felt wrong, dangerous. I had no idea who he was, but I knew I didn't want to find out the hard way. I set my coffee back in the holder, turned the key, and felt the familiar rumble of the engine vibrate through the cab. The sound was comforting, in a way. Solid, steady, alive. I eased the truck into gear, glancing once more toward the back of the building. He hadn't moved. As I rolled toward the exit, I caught one last look in the side mirror. The snow swirled around him, and for a second, I thought I saw the faintest curl of a smile. I didn't breathe easy until the glow of the truck stop faded into the darkness behind me. But even as the road stretched out ahead, the road after midnight feels like another world, especially in winter. The snow had thickened since I'd left the truck stop, falling in slow, deliberate flakes that seemed to hang in the air before settling on the asphalt. My wipers kept a steady rhythm, clearing the windshield in hypnotic sweeps. The world outside my headlights was a blur of black and white, everything else swallowed by darkness. The hum of the engine and the occasional crunch of ice under my tires were the only sounds. I hadn't passed another vehicle in at least 20 minutes, and there was something unnerving about that kind of solitude. You'd think it would be peaceful, but out here, alone, it just makes you feel exposed, like the world is empty and you're the last thing moving in it. I kept my eyes locked on the road, the steady white lines flicking by. Every so often, I'd glance at my mirrors, habit, drilled into me from years of trucking. That's when I saw it the first time. A flicker. Just a quick, sharp glint in the left side mirror, like light bouncing off a piece of chrome or glass. It was so brief, I thought I imagined it. I checked again. Nothing but darkness. A few minutes later, it happened again. This time I caught it. A brief reflection, faint, but there. Something was behind me. My grip on the wheel tightened. Out here in this weather, anyone following you is immediately suspicious. But when I shifted my gaze to the center mirror, there was nothing. Just the empty road, the snow, and the distant outline of trees. I told myself it might have been road reflectors or a patch of ice catching my lights. Still, I found myself checking the mirrors more often now, each glance making my chest feel a little tighter. It was the third flash that removed all doubt. I saw it clearly this time. A pair of headlights, only they weren't on. They were so close to the back of my trailer that they were completely hidden unless the vehicle edged slightly to the side, allowing my lights to bounce off them. No sane driver would do that in this weather. No one with any concern for their own safety would tailgate a semi in the snow, and definitely not without lights. A shiver crawled up my neck. My mind went back to the man at the truck stop, the way he stood in the shadows, staring, motionless. I told myself it could be anyone, just some reckless idiot on the road, but the thought didn't stick. I knew in the pit of my stomach it was him. I tried to keep calm, reminding myself to think like a professional. If someone's following, create space, test them. I merged into the left lane, watching the mirrors. The car followed. I moved back into the right lane. The car slid over too, like it was tethered to me. For a moment, I thought I'd grab the CB and try to reach another driver for backup, but there was nothing but static on the channel. No one was close enough to hear me. The snow was thickening, and the road beneath was starting to look sleek. My tires hummed over it, the vibration changing as the layer of ice grew. Whoever was back there didn't seem to care. They stayed glued to my bumper. No lights, no signals, just an ominous dark shadow in my mirrors. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they began to drop back. My mirrors went dark again.
I wanted to believe they had given up and turned off, but I've been driving long enough to know when something's wrong. That wasn't a random driver losing interest. That was someone biding their time. For the next hour, I saw nothing behind me, just the endless road and the heavy snow. I should have felt relief, but instead it made me more uneasy. I kept imagining a set of unseen eyes locked on me from somewhere out there in the dark, waiting for me to stop. By 3 a.m., my body was aching from the constant tension. My eyelids felt heavier with each mile. I spotted a small pull-off on the right. A rest stop in name only. No building, no vending machines, just enough asphalt to fit a couple of rigs and maybe a car or two. It was isolated, surrounded by a wall of trees so black they looked like they could swallow you whole. I hesitated. The place gave me a bad feeling. But
they were too close. So close that the glass fogged in small bursts with each slow, deliberate breath. The eyes were unnaturally wide, pale in the darkness, with the faint reflection of my own terrified face caught inside them. For a split second, my mind refused to register what I was seeing. I thought maybe I was dreaming, caught in one of those half-conscious nightmares where you can't move. But then the cold reality seeped in. My chest tightened, my skin prickled, and my muscles went rigid. It was him, the man from the truck stop. Up close, he looked wrong. His skin was stretched tight across his face, almost waxy, as if it had been frozen in place. His lips were slightly parted, revealing just a hint of yellowed teeth. But it was the eyes that held me, too wide, unblinking, the whites showing all the way around like an animal that had been startled but never relaxed again. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I jerked back violently, my knee hitting the steering column. The seat creaked under me as I shoved myself as far from the window as I could get. My heart thudded so hard it drowned out everything else. The man didn't flinch, he didn't blink. He simply stepped down from whatever foothold he'd used to get his face level with mine and reached for the door handle. The sound of it rattling was deafening in the stillness of the night. A quick metallic clack, 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 followed by a pause, then another set of rapid jerks. He was testing it, methodically, like he'd done it before. I grabbed at the lock instinctively, even though I was sure it was already engaged. My fingers were trembling so hard I nearly missed it. The cold metal felt slick under my sweaty palms. Then, just as suddenly, the rattling stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The faint whisper of snow brushing against the cab. My ears strained for any sound, footsteps, breathing, anything. But the stillness was almost worse than the noise. Then I heard it. Footsteps crunching in the snow, moving away from the truck. I reached for the CB radio with one hand, keeping my eyes fixed on the mirrors. My voice cracked as I called for help, rattling off my location and situation as quickly as I could. The dispatcher's voice was calm, almost too calm, as they told me officers were on the way. That's when my blood ran cold. From the corner of my left mirror, I saw movement, a dark shape pulling out from behind my trailer, slowly, quietly. It was a car, the same car I'd seen tailing me on the highway, headlights still off. It rolled toward the exit of the lot, and for a split second, the driver's face caught the dim glow of the highway lamps. I couldn't make out much, but I swear I saw those same wide, unblinking eyes. The police arrived faster than I expected, their flashing lights splashing across the snow. I climbed out of my cab, my legs shaky, and met them halfway. My breath was clouding in the frigid air, but I didn't feel the cold. I was still running hot with adrenaline.
I told them everything from the truck stop to the strange tailgating to waking up with that man's face inches from mine. They listened carefully, jotting notes, exchanging glances that told me they'd heard strange things before, but maybe not quite like this. One of them asked me to describe the man. I did in as much detail as I could manage, though the image of those eyes made it hard to focus on anything else. I mentioned the car, the way it had followed me, the lights always off, the sudden appearance at the rest stop. When I was done, they promised to keep an eye out, to search the surrounding area, but I could tell by the way they moved back toward their cruiser that they didn't expect to find him. I climbed back into my cab, locked the doors again, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. The flashing lights faded into the distance, leaving me alone once more in the snowy lot. I told myself I'd keep driving until sunrise. No more stops, no more parking in the middle of nowhere. But as I shifted into gear and pulled back onto the highway, something occurred to me. Something that made my stomach twist. When I first saw him at the truck stop, he'd been at the back of the building. No car in sight. When I left, the roads were empty, except for that strange, unlit vehicle that appeared behind me half an hour later. The timing, it didn't make sense, unless he'd been in that car the whole time. I tried to shake the thought, but it kept clawing back into my head. If he'd been in the car, when did he leave it? How did he get from the highway to my window in the middle of the night without me hearing anything? And most disturbing of all, what would have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did? The snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white silence. My headlights carved a narrow path through the dark, and every shadow beyond their reach seemed to shift. Somewhere out there,